forget how I even open these. I haven't done one in a while.
Yeah, I've never done one, so I really don't know.
Yes. Another fine evening in the Timegate Tavern. And what's this I see? A friend from afar comes a-visiting. Yea, verily. Hail, good sir.
Hello.
Hi, it's Big Mac. Hey.
Hello.
It's my friend Big Mac. Yay.
Yeah.
It's a Timegate Tavern. I haven't done one of these in months. Partially because I've been kind of busy, but partially because World of Warcraft's weird. I feel like it's in a weird state right now. Because in a lot of ways, this new expansion, I don't know that hype is the right word to describe it. But also, usually at the end of the expansion, we have this like content drought where everyone takes a break. And instead, Blizzard gave us these like FOMO super events where they want us to hop in and do daily quests and get burnt out on the game right before the expansion. And it's like, I try to keep a rule on the show to not dwell on negativity and just be one of those, like, I'm going to complain about everything kind of like essays.
Mm-hmm.
And so as a result, I never upload anything because everything I have to say is negative lately.
I mean, I kind of get that. Like, a lot of shit's just been seeming negative no matter what as well. So, like, even if you want to stay positive, it's just, you can't really ignore it.
Yeah. But the reason I want to avoid being negative is because it's more fun to challenge ourselves to be constructive.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those things, like, I hate how every time I do say something negative, I think the feedback I get on the episode is someone says, well, you know what you should play is Final Fantasy. And I look at my Eternal Flames watch I have on my desk, and I look at my copy of, Final Fantasy 14, not A Realm Reborn, that I have on my shelf. And it's like, who are you to tell me? Like, I haven't heard about the award-winning game Final Fantasy 14, A Realm Reborn, with an extended trial, and everyone knows the joke.
With the newly expanded free trial.
But it's like, at the same time, I do admit, though, when you're getting burnt out on an MMO, you can take a break. I think WoW's pretty good about it. I think, honestly, the amount of content that WoW offers still almost warrants a subscription. But doubly so if you adequately budget your time and step away when you're not having fun anymore. Because when you come back, there will actually be stuff worth doing. And so I give them a little credit there, even if that sounds backhanded. But my point really is, yeah, I've been playing more Final Fantasy lately, getting excited for the expansion that's, by the time this goes up, I think it'll be officially out for everybody, and not just the pre-orders.
Hopefully I'll be able to play it by then, because I can't transfer back to my home world to play it right now.
Yes, your home world is Mars. You're a Martian?
Yep.
Okay. The first rule of improv is to say yes, even if it's not funny to do so.
I was very excited. I was staying up till, like, the early release and all that, and when it happened, I'm like, alright, let's log in, and I tried transferring back to the home data center in the home world I was on, and it's like, oh, you can't select this at this time, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, let me just log into the one that I'm currently in. Oh, due to congestion, we're not allowing other traveling visitors to log in, and I'm just like, oh, so I'm just fuck me then, okay. And that's what I'm currently dealing with.
So, since we all agree that Final Fantasy is the best MMO ever, and we talk about stuff all the time. We talk about a lot of different games. I think, like, right now you're playing Fallout 4.
76, yeah. I was.
That's the New Vegas expansion that just came out?
Yeah.
On Amazon Prime or something? The Fortnite Battle Pass?
Maybe? I mean, I would not be surprised if Fallout 76 is on Amazon Prime gaming stuff.
Oh, that too. I was talking about the TV show. That was the reference.
Uh,
I like the Nuka-Cola on Fortnite. That's all I know about Fallout.
yeah, I'm not too well versed on Fallout. The big Fallout person in our group is definitely Lucky, but he also despises new Fallout stuff because he's like the Fallout 1 and 2 fan, not the Fallout 3 and onwards. He liked Interplay's Fallout, not Bethesda's Fallout type thing.
Those were the days.
Yeah. Definitely what he says is like, oh, that was Fallout. That's how Fallout is and should be and all that. Which I won't give him too much guff about it, but like, you can't get the old stuff back. It's gone now, and sometimes, no matter how much that sucks, you just gotta deal with it.
It still doesn't make the new stuff good.
Oh yeah, no. I'm not saying, oh yeah, you have to accept the new stuff, just don't play the new stuff.
I think nobody appreciates that sentiment more than Warcraft fans, because cripes, man. I told you about like how Dragonflight ends, right? Like the end of the final raid.
I was gonna say, maybe. I don't fully remember. I know we've talked about Dragonflight a lot before.
This great comparison. This was on like an Asmongold video or something where he brought up a cutscene from Warcraft 2. And Warcraft 2, it had this pre-rendered cutscene of like a huge army of orcs like rushing to war. And it was this huge, just like the scale of everything. It just felt so like dark and heavy. And it's like, wow, this is like cool. And then Thrall like wakes up and it was a vision of his future. And it's like he has to unite everyone and form the Horde. And it's like, man, this is like cool and ominous. It's like, what's going to happen next? And then he plays the end cutscene when you finish the Dragonflight raid. And all the dragons are all these like pretty elf people. And for no reason, they magically were granted their magic powers back by a magic tree. And the blue dragon looks at everyone and says, "We've done this together as a family." And they all smile. And it's like, I'm not feeling the same passion for this brand right now.
Come on, you don't like having family. You don't like every fucking ending to Fast and the Furious. It's all about family.
I mean, I understand why people write stories about this like found family concept. What I don't understand is how when your game is called World of Warcraft and you're like, well, let's play down the world part. We're going to focus on one island. And war is a very harsh word. Let's not bring that up so much. And, you know, we're not really crafting war anymore because the war, so it's just log in. We're just going to call it WoW. Okay, you're going to see all the glitter and you go, wow.
Yeah.
So, whatever. The reason, though, I wanted to invite you on the show, because this is very much a Warcraft-focused show.
Mm-hmm.
You and I, we played a lot of Final Fantasy together, and it got me thinking, man, I really like how they balance things in Pathfinder 2.
It's definitely something I enjoy as well about it, because it's, like, as someone who did a good, like, I paid for a lot of stuff with D&D 5e, and when they did that whole OGL, whatever the fuck it was, thing a while back, where it's like, hey, if you make content for our game, and you make over a certain amount, you owe us money. Even though you did all this by yourself, and you're just using our system as a base. Like, we did nothing other than provide you with a rule set.
For anybody out there, too, I don't know if our listeners here, I have 12 of them. I don't know if they listen for tabletop news, so they might not be caught up. Imagine if you paid for a mod for WoW, and Blizzard said, yeah, you're allowed to sell mods. You can collect money off of it. But then as soon as a like very successful mod made money, then they changed the rules retroactively and said, actually, why don't you give us some of that after the fact, after years of this, without warning?
Yeah, like
it's a little odd.
Yeah, like Radish said, they were allowing people to make free stuff, like not free, but sell things using a open gaming license, which is their OGL, which, like, not even with tabletop news, a lot of things actually do use this OGL. Like, for example, Knights of the Old Republic. It uses the OGL for its entire game system. It uses I don't exactly know how old, but it does use a D&D system as its base. And they went, you owe us money now. After none of that for, I don't even know how many years.
A ridiculous amount of time. Anyways, Hasbro's a shit company. We don't talk about Hasbro in this tavern much.
Yeah, we're talking about Paizo. We're talking about Pathfinder.
Yeah, so Pathfinder, very clearly, very simply, it's I'm going to say it's like a knockoff of D&D. Not in a mean way, but just in like a shorthand way. Just picture it as it's knockoff D&D. We have D&D at home. However, I've found that D&D hasn't been that great. I think I like 3.5 edition. I wasn't super sold on 4, and I did not like 5. And Pathfinder's been the better one. Yeah,
fun thing, the Pathfinder initially started off with how Raj said, rip off D&D, blah, 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 but it was initially an offshoot of 3.5 edition. Because certain people didn't like how 3rd edition worked, and when like 3.5 came out, people didn't really like that either. So a group of people using the OGL went, well, let's make our own D&D. And they made an entire unique world. It was not affiliated with D&D. It was a completely new custom setting. And it did well. It did really well. Paizo succeeded in short, what's the word I'm looking for? In the long and short of it, I guess. So, they made, eventually, I don't exactly remember when, but they made a 2nd edition of their system. And that is a system that even more people are just thoroughly enjoying. They're having fun with it. And then Hasbro went and looked at that, because we can say all we want about it. The truth of it is Hasbro watched Pathfinder make all this good stuff with, the basis of their system and went, no, you owe us, give me that. You have essentially nothing to do with us other than the fact that you're using the OGL, but we want that money. And in doing so, they were going to try and screw over every person who does stuff with D&D. But going back to Pathfinder, they, with that happening, went, well, all right, we're making our own system now, and they made I understand that we're back on talking about like tabletop news stuff, but it kind of gives the background of what we're eventually going to fully talk about.
Well, yeah, that's a lot of the context of it, but really, too, something that I kind of observed right away is that the RPG elements in Pathfinder 2 right now, they strike me very familiar with MMO logic.
Okay.
Like, there's a lot of design choices and stuff where in a tabletop role-playing game, you tend to have like this freedom to do whatever that you can't program into a video game. But also, well, here's your talent choices. Like, they're very restrictive. There's a lot of them, but they're kind of like structured in a certain way that's like intentionally balanced. And the whole like the Pathfinder society thing it has this very like, hey, it's basically like an online queue equivalent where it's like, hey, you want to go do a dungeon? Well, like, here's your bard. Go find a party, and you're all going to be matched. If you're all level 3, you're going to be level 3 strength, and it's very accurate about the power level.
Yeah, so I will agree with that. Like, I did
on paper, at least, but
I did kind of want to run our games as a Pathfinder Society thing, but I feel like it'd be better to just home rule it and all that, because if I ran it as a Pathfinder Society thing, and I think I can, like, it would actually get us the Pathfinder Society points that they have, which would open up more options for you when you actually did, like, bigger Pathfinder Society things. Like, if you would have gone to, say, one of the cons that Paizo does or whatever, like, one that I know of, I don't know if it's recent or not, there's Gen Con, and they... Like, I'm pretty sure they do Pathfinder Society games at Gen Con.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and it is very... It's cool. I like it. Like, you get the Pathfinder Society points, and then you can purchase, like, extra options. Like, you can unlock those uncommon options that... There's something else we should probably mention. Pathfinder, with certain things... They have common, uncommon, and rare as a, like, how they are. And they have that with races, spells, items, all that stuff.
So really, like, this is how, in Warcraft, you would probably compare it to, like, the heroic classes, like Demon Hunter and Death Knight are on their separate tier, and they kind of operate slightly different within certain rules because they're, like, special. You're limited to 1 per server. Because they're, like, theoretically more complicated or better in certain regards. And that's kind of how Pathfinder works. Where there are some, like, rare ancestries, and they're rare... No, yeah, there's uncommon classes. The rare classes haven't come out yet.
Yeah, I was gonna say, they haven't... Are the new newbie one... Not newbie, but the new one's gonna be rare ones? Or is the whatchamacallit? God's Blood one. I can't remember what they're called.
The Maui from Disney's Moana is a rare class.
And is I
can't remember the name. It's so awkward. It's like a spirit talkie class where you talk to ghosts. Yeah, I think that's also rare.
Yeah, they're also going to be including, like, a new commander class and a new quote unquote tanking class where their whole thing is, like, they draw attention if people try to attack other people. It puts debuffs on them. So, like, if the DM is wanting to fight optimally, which let's set this straight. A good DM is not against their players. They are with their players. They are trying to cooperate to tell a story.
You know, I kind of want to talk to you about this class. That might actually be an interesting point on the show.
All right.
Have you watched any of the... have you seen any test games with it?
I haven't. I wouldn't even know where to look for them, because the only games I really watch that have Pathfinder is the narrative declaration people.
It's I really like it on paper, the Guardian. I like the idea of, like, heavy armor being, you know, big and strong and defensive. I like being, like, the shield of the group. Like, I'll stand at the front, everyone get ready, kind of thing. It just seems like the champion or the paladin or whatever is better, and maybe the fighter is better, because there's things about the Guardian where technically, yeah, it's cool that you get access to better armor faster. But it's like you can't do anything with it because the taunt ability, like in Pathfinder, enemy attacks don't work off of an aggro system. At least they don't always.
It's more of a the DM will mentally make the aggro stuff, and, like, most DMs will go, well, if I'm this guy and I see this dude suddenly start flinging spells around, well, I'm going to want to attack him because, holy shit, magic's scary.
Yeah, there's a lot of monsters that kind of have guides. Like this is a basic animal, so it's going to attack whatever's closest to it. This is a strategic archer, so he's going to look for the weak point. And it's half role play in terms of like how the DM wants to run it, or GM, whatever. So they kind of like I think there's a design choice where they deliberately don't want an actual aggro system, because it sort of like implies that you can take control away from someone's decision making, and having that in the system kind of has this risk of it being applied against players, which is a bad feeling. So it's like, we don't want an aggro system at all.
Yeah, because if they did have an aggro system, like you said there, it could take decision making away, which, I mean, they do have with some of the conditions, with like the fascinated condition and all that. If it's doing things not regarding the target of their fascination, they get malices.
Yeah, but with those, they tend to be like daily spells, not I'm going to do this every turn.
Yeah, it's like a daily spell, or like the saving throw might
Stuff
lessen
like
or counteract it. Yeah, it's...
So, yeah, with the Guardian, how it taunts is like, it basically, when you taunt, you expose yourself to make yourself a better target. And I feel like if you think about a traditional like MMO logic, you put your brave paladin in the front line, he taunts, he uses his defense ability to raise his shield, and the boss hits him. And by hitting him, it's doing less damage, and that damage is also not going to the healer. And in Pathfinder, you stand in front of your buddies and you say, hey, you skeleton, attack me instead. And you expose yourself so that the skeleton's more likely to do more damage against you, which gives your healer more work to do. And then also, the skeleton's not obligated to, so there might be a situation where even though you do that, he would rather just not anyways.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, I see where they're going for. I almost see it. I feel like, depending how your GM handles it, maybe it's great, and maybe it's the worst thing ever. And I feel like it's going to lead to a lot of arguments at tables, unless it's changed drastically.
Yeah, and on like a note like that, it is very much GM dependent, because like some GMs could like, okay, player says, I want to mess with this guy, and I want to do like the Bon Mot ability, if they take Bon Mot as like one of those little feats, and I want to try and mess with them, and the GM's like, all right, well, you make the skill check, and depending on how well the skill check goes, we'll see what happens. And skill check goes well, and they're like, oh, so they're angry at you, but they're going to keep attacking that guy and take the malice, because that guy's still scarier. They're just now being less effective, versus where you may have wanted it to be, I want them to come after me. I want them to attack me. And it's just, it depends on how the GM would end up playing it. Because they could play it as, alright, yeah, so you taunted them, you did the Bon Mot, you did all that stuff, they're going to turn to you and they're going to charge you and they're going to start fucking trying to cut your head off because you made them angry.
So it's like, it's interesting. They have the tools there. I feel like that, this is why they do the tests and they look for feedback. So, I don't know. I expect Guardian to get a lot more updates than the Commander.
Yeah, well, it's definitely why they're doing their playtest, because they're doing a semi-aggro system in a game that does not have an aggro system.
And so I feel like, what if they just didn't do this aggro system? Like, what if instead of taunting, it was just like, hey, look, you wear better armor. Like, what if you are the fighter and you just have better armor options than weapon options?
Okay, yeah. No, I think I see what you're saying. Like, sure, it's the same armor, but you get better benefits from it.
Yeah. Stuff like, there's a couple Guardian abilities I kind of like. Like, there's one where I don't know if this is part of a taunt system or not, but there's a thing where if an enemy is within range of your melee, they're not allowed to leave that range. So you can really lock them down in that like fight. And it's like, if I didn't have to expose myself and have lower armor score, I would really like this ability.
I gotta look at this. I didn't even know that was a thing. That sounds very interesting.
It does. I feel like there's a lot of asterisks on it. Like if you have like 10-foot range, it doesn't work the same or something. I don't know. There's a handful of things that are weird, and it's like, I could picture being like a really big minotaur. So you have that bigger like size on the table, and you have, 2 or 3 enemies that are technically within range of your attacks. And now all your ranged guys can safely step back and regroup while you're holding all these guys at bay. And then you like do a bull rush and charge and barrel through a couple of them just to clear out a shot so that the wizard can land his like thunder spell and hit all 3 of them. And it's like, oh, what a cool moment where everyone played a part and it worked out and you got out of this sticky ambush situation. And it's like, I don't know if it'll ever play out this way, but in theory, I see where they're going for.
Yeah, and I guess it's really just going to come down to seeing how it comes out when it releases, or how these playtests happen and all that stuff. Because it seems interesting, it seems neat, but
I like the commander more.
The commander, based on what little I've seen of them as well with what you've shown me, they do seem like the more interesting one. Because they have their actions, they can give everyone else, like, either, I'm trying to remember if it was like a free action, or they can spend their reaction to, like, do free stuff.
Yeah, so mechanically speaking, the commander is kind of like a bard. It's like a caster almost. Just instead of spells, they're martial attacks that are in the form of your allies attacking. Now, what I mean by that is, like, you don't just buff your allies. It's like, I use my ability where everyone that can hear me all instantly readies their bow and fires together freely, and they all get their full turn anyways later. So mechanically, you're just casting a spell that is, my 3 buddies all shoot you.
Yeah.
And mathematically, it adds up to the same as if the wizard cast a fireball spell with his same number of actions, So it's like, thematically, you get this different thing going on, and it kind of functions a little bit different, and it kind of functions depending on how well you're cooperating with your buddies, because they do have to be positioned well enough to make use of this. So there's some interesting variables at play there, but if you do it right, it could be super strong.
Yeah, it does seem very, very fun, frankly. Like, it's to perpetuate the meme a little bit, it's a shame that I'm mostly going to be DMing, and even if I wasn't, I don't know if I'd be fully satisfied being a player, because it seems like it'd be fun to play these characters, and as far as I can tell, the best way for me to be able to do that would be to make DMPCs that the players would eventually interact with or just have to fight against. Which is, little spoiler, an eventual encounter that I am planning for one of our groups.
Boo, spoilers.
Like, I'm not sure if I'm still going to do it, but in our Outlaws campaign, since one of our members just quit, and this little thing I was going to do is essentially like kind of hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge towards that being a thing. I was going to have it so a character would make mention that they're looking for his character in our Abomination Vaults campaign. And somewhere down the line, that would be a possibility of something happening.
And then Doctor Strange opens the portals, and then my character from my D&D campaign shows up. And this is, missed me, fellas! Oh.
But yeah, I'm probably not going to do the little tidbit in our Outlaws campaign anymore, because he dropped out of that campaign.
The reference isn't quite there now.
Yeah, the reference won't be there because he's not there anymore. But I still have an encounter like that in mind. I just have to work it out and get it set up as an actual encounter.
So on that topic though of actually constructing this stuff, I really fell in love with Pathfinder 2 faster than I thought I would. Like, the more I read on it and the more I read how compatible all the rules are, it just seems so well thought out and balanced, at least compared to other systems.
Oh, yeah.
It's not perfect, but I find it just super easy to have fun with. And I think that's the realization I had, is I really don't like actual balance, because that just homogenizes everything into being boring. Because this is a complaint I've had with Final Fantasy right now. All the tanks basically feel the same. They each bring their own element, but by and large, it's much more important to know the fight mechanics than it is your own class.
Yeah, I was going to say, at the end of the day, they are essentially just the same class with a different feature.
You get your 1-2-3 combo, 1-2-3 combo. You have relatively similar cooldowns. You have a cool DPS moment, and then go back to your 1-2-3, 1-2-3 shield, 1-2-3, 1-2-3.
Yeah, and when you're doing pulls, it's don't even use the 1-2-3. You use your AOE combos.
1-2, 1-2, 1-2, 1-2.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I told you about this a while ago, but the Evoker class in WoW.
Was that the buffer class?
That has a spec you can choose where you focus on buffing. And I found it very interesting. I pretty much, since that came out, that was my main spec. That was my role in the guild. Mm-hmm. I want to say it was optimal to have 2 or 3 on a team. And no one else in the guild wanted to play it because it's not fun. Because you don't get your DPS meter boner moment. And I guess I kind of get that, but it was kind of fun mechanically. I enjoyed it. And I liked being helpful and Overwatch. I basically do Overwatch. I am surveying the whole fight. I'm paying attention. When I see one player messing up a mechanic, I can literally fly over, pick him up, set him where he's supposed to be, fly back into position.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, I was kind of playing Commander already. It's a fun role to have.
Yeah.
As long as you're not watching the damage meter and envying the other players, So it depends on what you want out of the content, I guess.
Yeah, I was about to say, it's not I'm doing all this super heavy damage, and look at, I'm getting the special feelies from that. It's more of the, hey, everyone's doing well, I feel good about that.
Yeah. So, I thought it was fun. What was weird is when they first announced, we're going to do a buffing spec where you cast spells that empower your allies. And this is something that I think players have been asking for a very long time. There's always been hey, when are we going to get a bard? When are we going to get some sort, why doesn't the shaman cast more spells that empower everybody? Because you get one massive cooldown. So it's always been part of the identity of the class, but it's why not lean into that more? You put down a totem and everyone attacks better. And they always say how hard it is to balance. So they finally came out with one, and it's did they figure out how to balance it? And apparently they didn't even think about it, because the day it came out, I've shown you that video, right?
Yeah, where they
smearing video, the boss, they got a team where it's 38 evokers and then 1 rogue, and they all buff the rogue at the same time, and then the rogue kills the boss in 5 hits.
Yeah, I was saying the boss died instantly,
and it's you guys didn't put a cap on it. Why did you add this so late if you didn't care this much? Which is it? And it took them a while to figure out how to safely balance it and safely reel it in so that it's mathematically speaking, if you pick the DPS spec, you'll contribute X amount of damage. And if you pick the buffing spec, you'll also contribute the same amount of damage. if you tally up how much you're buffing your allies if you do it right. And by the math, it's mostly pretty even and pretty good, on top of some added utility. So if you pick the buff one, it's kind of nice to complement the whole party that way.
Yeah.
But it took them a while to get there. And apparently it was so hard to do that they said they do not plan on adding any other specs that will do this buff mechanic, especially because that would like take up that niche that the Evoker now has. And I remember thinking, like, why? Like, wouldn't you want to structure the game so that it actually, like, you want to always have at least one buff guy? Like, you should put in a buff spec for Shaman and add Bard so that people have 3 different options for buffs.
Yeah.
And just not have them stack, you know?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I mean, hey, we released this thing and turns out we fucking made it broken, so we don't want to do that again, so we're just not going to, is a sentiment I semi-understand, but still just like, or learn from your mistakes and make it better?
So, yeah, and so that's just a thought experiment I think about a lot. Like, boy, how could they do it better? How could they execute it better? Fast forward a bit, we start the Pathfinder game, and I ran into a funny situation where my wizard learned a spell, and I'm like, I know, I'll use my wizard spell on our lizard to engorge his gizzard. And I cast like a tattoo rune on him to make his monk punches better.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned out the runic tattoo did not do anything because he already had a +1 from his magic handkerchief.
Yeah, he had the buff already that the spell would have given him from his equipment.
Yeah. Mechanically, in Pathfinder, you basically have like a category of buff and they don't stack. So they already thought this through better than Warcraft did. And this is an older rule than Warcraft. Yeah,
like, especially with the whole, like, hey, you want to, like, you have this +1 thing, this spell will give you +1 striking. You're not going to become +2 striking, but it will give you the striking.
Yeah.
So it is balanced out, and like circumstance bonuses, they don't stack. You just take whatever the highest available one is.
So that's when I realized this is a very easy fix in WoW. Is that there should just be like, I think every character should basically have a slot for buff application.
Mm-hmm.
And what you could do is you have a character in your party that can cast a spell that will buff you, and it just activates that slot for your character while the buff is active.
Yeah,
and what that character's spell will do will maybe have like a tertiary effect. So maybe it adds your agility to your rogue, but you're getting it from your bard, which also gives you a little bit of haste. Or you're getting the buff from your dragon buddy, and it gives you a little bit of crit also.
Yeah.
Instead of the haste buff. And then in the situation where maybe you just don't have someone in your party that casts these spells, you could use a consumable item, kind of like the war drums, where it's just sort of like, it sort of does it, but not as good. You're going to wish you had a caster to do it, but you're not severely like underpowered as a result. You can use this consumable to make up for that.
Yeah. It's like how with one of the things that we very recently just came across with the campaign, you got told like, hey, there's this person that we think is still alive, even though he's like been missing for 30 years. And when we last saw him, he was literally chased off a cliff. But we got a suspicion that he's still alive, and he's a werewolf. So, go get some silvery stuff. And instead of like silvering your weapons and all that, there was the option of, hey, go buy some silver paste, this consumable item that will allow you to treat your weapons as if they are silvered for I think it was an hour, if I remember right.
Yeah, but a basic enchantment that fulfills that need without the huge investment of restructuring our whole armament, I feel like, as much as it's annoying to backseat armchair game dev, sometimes I look at the decisions that the Warcraft team makes, and it's like, you guys are overthinking this way too hard. Yeah. And MMOs are super complicated, but you're still overthinking it.
Yeah, it's definitely that, and like you said, as much as everyone loves to armchair game development, like, we don't know what actually goes into it, and to kind of go off track of Warcraft, if your game does not have PvP elements, say, like Helldivers or the Payday games, there's no reason to nerf things. You should just buff things to get them on, like, the same track. Like, oh, it's optimal to do this, but no one uses this lesser used weapon. And most game companies will go, well, we'll nerf the meta thing. That way people are forced to go, like, pass around the other items. Why not just make the other item better? And a lot of people just don't seem to really do that.
Yeah, and I think I understand how, you can fall into that logic trap too, where it's like, well, we should reel it in so it's working as intended. But you also have to think about, is this actually fun enough to, as a player, do you want to come home from work or school, sit down and do this? Because it's not fun to come home, log onto Helldivers, and then you find out that the gun you've been using does not kill things anymore.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, why are my bullets reflecting off the armor now? It's like, oh yeah, well, we changed it. Too many people were picking it. It's like, well, like, what am I supposed to do? It's like, well, you'll need to rethink your strategy, buddy.
Which, I mean, again, I haven't played Helldivers in a while. Didn't they kind of restructure that again? They actually went, all right, you know what? Let's not nerf things. Let's just put buffs all around and, like, undo some of the nerfs we've done. Isn't that something?
A little bit, yeah. They fixed a huge number of things. Like, the patch notes were very long. It was kind of funny. But what was interesting was the language they used for some of the changes, because there's, like, that very basic, your very first orbital strike you get when you're level 1. So they had this patch note about how the point of that was kind of to be this, like, all-around use that you could use for, like, certain situations, but people were using it for, like, everything because it's actually so strong that it destroys forts, it destroys like, bigger enemies. People were using it excessively. So what we did was we lowered the cooldown when you call it in, so it's easier to more accurately land on Bile Titans, because people want to hit Bile Titans with it. And it's like, oh, that wasn't the twist I was expecting. Like, I was waiting for that's why we were removing it from the game. And they're just kind of like, hey, we saw you kept missing some shots, so what if they came in faster and actually hit your target? There you go, buddy. Have fun.
Yeah, and it's stuff like that. And I understand Warcraft does have World of Warcraft does have PvP elements, so they can't just buff everything. They do have to actually worry about a balance thing. But it's weird to see them just weaken.
Yeah, like, we go back to that example of the 38 dragons all buffing one rogue, and yeah, I see the problem. That should be fixed. However, it was kind of fun to see. So, would it be possible to maybe leave that in if you're under, like, the current level? Like, for old content, can you go in with your buddies and see how fast you can kill the Lich King now? Turn it into a funny mini game of, like, okay, buff contest, buff speed run, do the all buff run. Can you beat the 5-second kill on Lich King last week?
Yeah, like how
turn it into a joke.
How to go to Final Fantasy, they have unsynchronized dungeons and they have blue mages.
Yes. And the blue mage, like, you learn enemy attacks, but that includes, like, bosses. So you can get raid abilities and customize your whole spellcaster layout. and then go in and do these like challenge modes where it's like, look at me, I'm going to solo this whole dungeon. I'm going to solo this raid. Fuck it.
Yeah, and like even without the blue mages, there's unsynced where you'll go back to like a level 5 dungeon at level 100, which is the now cap, thanks to Dawn Trail, and you'll just literally one-shot everything. I say level 5, lowest level's 15 dungeon. I should correct myself there. Go back to the level
That is how WoW works right now, though. Yeah, I kind of wish that WoW would catch up with the level scaling concept. Because, like, one of my biggest problems is they keep calling these expansions, but every expansion makes the game feel smaller.
Mm.
Because everything else in the game becomes instantly irrelevant. It's never again challenging or interesting. And even if you're leveling an alt, like, you go through it faster because they'll buff the XP gain. So it's like you can't even experience the story, the pace that it was written. Which I find very odd. Like, there's so much content technically there, and it's all basically put in sleep mode.
Okay, so I understand what you're saying. They don't have the, like, how Final Fantasy has level sync. They don't have that?
Not really, no.
Wow.
So, like, if I want to play a Mista Pandaria dungeon, it just kind of exists at half of my level at all times.
Yeah, that's... Ugh.
Yeah, there's not really a reason to do it. I have been doing this thing where, and this is boring for Warcraft players, so I'll be fast. They have these like weekly events where it's like, oh, time walking, Mista Pandaria edition. And you can queue up for versions of the dungeon that are scaled up to max level. However, sometimes it doesn't work right. And I remember there was this one dungeon in Warlords where when it was Warlords Time Walking Week, no one would queue up because the first boss, like, accidentally was doing, like, 5 times as much damage as it's supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
So the tank ability, like, there's a tank buster, and it will instant kill the tank even with the shield up. And so if your party cannot kill the boss fast enough, it will just one-shot the tank and then one-shot everybody else right after. And it's like, I don't remember it being this hard back in Warlords time. No, it does. Its attack does more than my max HP. It's not supposed to do this. It's very sloppy. I'm sorry. You're a Final Fantasy player. It's very sloppy.
Sloppy.
So, yeah, there are things about WoW that make me come back. I love Final Fantasy a lot, but it's like, man, I really miss WoW right now. And then I'll come back to WoW. And it's like, boy, Final Fantasy has a better camera system.
Yeah.
Boy, it's a lot easier to party up with people in this game. Boy, this whole thing is, oh boy, I miss that. I keep going back and forth.
Yeah, it's oh man, you know what? I kind of feel like going to the game I fell in love with and, like, playing their newest content. Dead. Oh man, their new content's not that great. Oh man, their other game that's like their direct competitor actually is kind of doing this way better. I really wish that this was doing this better. Like, I know they can. That heart and soul used to be there. Where'd it go? And it is.
Oh man. You know what else I like in Pathfinder that actually does share a lot with Warcraft?
What?
I love playing monster races.
It is very unique to see the monstrous people. Yeah, like to give a comparison of D&D and Pathfinder, gnolls are not a playable race in D&D. Pathfinder, they are. In D&D, they have the lore of, they're demon spawn, they're evil. But that's old D&D lore now. Everything can be whatever now, because having things that are born evil is bad. Everything's a product of its upbringing. And, like, so having a creature that is naturally evil, like a gnoll, suddenly not be evil is no longer unique. It's just, it's bog standard. Everything's fine and nice and dandy. Whereas gnolls were like, hey, people thought they were evil because they have really fucking weird traditions. and they have like a unique mindset due to like their upbringing. But they aren't really evil, they're just genuinely misunderstood. Not like, oh, this race that was evil is actually misunderstood.
It's not a retcon.
Yeah, it's not a retcon. It's they wear the bones of their dead. They're savages, but the actual like lore of it is they wear the bones of their dead to honor their dead. Like, if their parents were great hunters, they wear the bones of their parents because they think their parents' spirit will be with them and help them be better hunters.
So, I bring this up because, I played through Dragonflight with the new playable dragon race, and it's like, this is a lot of fun. I did a video on how Dragthyr feel a little out of place.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking of doing a video about how, boy, they're a lot more interesting than these stupid new dwarves we're getting, right?
The dwarves that are made of rocks?
Yeah, my problem too, this is more of a video format issue, but I would love to illustrate how I don't think that the earthen dwarves look good. And I realized why is that I saw their mount. They get a cool ram that's like made out of rock.
Yeah, the rock and
where its
grass
fur
and earth
should be
and all
growing as grass. Yeah. And it looks like it's actually crafted and it just looks better. And then you look at the player race and it's like their skin still moves like skin. It has this like flat rock texture, but it doesn't look like rock or stone. It looks like you just have the wrong texture on a dwarf model. And then these very like weird misshapen gems. Like they're not even like interesting looking gems. Like I don't get why the crystals grow that way. Because it doesn't look good.
And to that point, and this is a World of Warcraft thing that like I've noticed, all of the skin textures, like all of the armors and all that, are just a retextured skin. Whereas Final Fantasy, it's actual like clothing that's on your character. I
do want to point out they have been getting a little more into 3D models for clothes more recently.
Okay. I mean,
it doesn't always work out because it just leads to even worse clipping issues. So there's a pro and a con there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it doesn't help sell the rock thing. Like I want them to look more like golems or something where there's like their hand should be a solid object, not this squishy thing that like flexes with their fingers when they clench their fists.
Yeah.
It's subtle details. And narratively, they have some interesting hooks. I saw a preview about them. I'm kind of waiting until I can actually get like hands-on and play with one before I do this video. But it's like, they almost have something here because I love the idea of playing an elemental. It falls into that monster race category where it's like, oh, this is very far removed from my real-life human existence. So it's a fun thought exercise to go through.
Yeah, I get that. And
but they're not doing that much with them.
And to put that towards the Pathfinder side of things, I do agree with that. Like, you have like thought of playing an elemental, and they have options to play as like elemental born people. They have the Ifrits and the I think they're called the Sylphs and all that, and they're in essence they're the Genasi from D&D, but they're not locked to their own race. Which is another thing I really like about Pathfinder. You can mix and match so much shit. You want to play a half elf, half angel, swashbuckling gunslinger. You can do that.
I want to be a half human, half skeleton, and I just keep my skeleton on the inside, and I wear the human part like armor out on the outside.
And mechanically, you can do that. The question becomes, how the fuck would that actually work, though? You're just, like...
A very bored necromancer had a funny idea one night.
Like, so I'm picturing, like, how you have your character in the Abomination Vaults campaign. You're playing the skeleton-human hybrid, and you take the collapse feat. What the fuck happens there?
Well, it's like you just mush out, like you,
Yeah, like
you like Gmod ragdoll out, and it makes that funny, like.
exactly. Like it seems genuinely fun. And another thing is, and this is a me thing, I'm surprised no one has half raced into a Beastkin character.
I was a little surprised no one picked that either.
Like, because it's not just, oh, you're a werewolf, and now they have the werewolf, the Beastkin archetype now, so you don't even have to pick that as a versatile heritage, you just can take it. But I thought more people, especially people who were around, would be interested in being were-creatures.
He means furries.
Yes, but I was also just saying our group. I figured our group would have been more interested in were-creatures than
I'm more interested in like being obnoxiously stupid. Because like I was eyeing for the longest time being a Konrasu.
Konrasu's pretty fucking neat.
They're very unique. I don't think I've ever seen something like this in a game like these that's quite as interesting, because it's like conceptually you're like a weird star gem baby where you're just a sphere and you have random holes that like poke out light, and that is your body. And then you grow plants and wood around you to protect yourself, and you make these like temporary limbs out of flexible wood until they like dry up and you need to grow new arms.
Yeah.
Like it's so like weird to high concept where it's like you cannot fit into society. Like you have to live in the woods. It's like you cannot relate to anyone walking around the street.
And I think I hate to keep bringing up another podcast group in your podcast, but the Narrative Declaration people in their primary campaign, the Rock Grind campaign, they have a Konrasu as one of their player characters. And it's
Rad.
Fun seeing him do stuff, because like on one of the episodes he did I don't remember what led up to it, but he essentially summoned a live chicken and drowned it in a pot to make food for people. And while all the other players are horrified, his character is going like, "What? You guys need to eat? I made you food.
Protein mash.
I'm making you food. Why are you acting all freaked out about this? This is food, is it not?"
And I love how like I've had a lot of fun role-playing my skeleton wizard, because he kind of has like phantom limb for his skin. So he'll like wink or he'll like stick his tongue out at people, and it's just like basically nothing's happening and everyone in the room's just staring at him.
Yeah, it's very fun and neat to actually play other things.
Okay, I told you my Konrasu concept, right? I want it to basically look like a totem pole with like the orb in the middle. And he basically doesn't have limbs, and you just have to lean him in a wheelchair, and he rolls around that way.
Yeah.
And he'll kind of like roll out, and just like everyone else has to stop and pick him up and put him back in the wheelchair. And he'll say, "Thank you," and they'll just like keep squeaking along.
On that topic, I do personally find it a little dumb about like wheelchair adventures. But at least Pathfinder does it a bit more tastefully than D&D did it.
Yeah. I you know, and I don't want to dwell too much on like for some reason D&D battle wheelchairs is like this like controversial topic in theory. But whenever you sit down at a table, usually someone at the table says, "Hey, I think this," and then everyone just kind of agrees and it's fine. Because that's how the actual, like, if you actually play the game, that's how human beings act. But when you're on the internet, it becomes this hypothetical of well, what about this person that I don't know and may not exist, but I believe they're possible? And it's like, okay, why? It's like a thought experiment that gets out of hand.
Yeah, and, like, with how I'm saying, with the whole Pathfinder and D&D doing it tastefully, D&D is going with the assumption of, oh, hey, if one of your characters are in a wheelchair, you have to make every one of your things wheelchair accessible. Otherwise, you're being mean to your player. Where in Pathfinder it went, hey, so here's the issue with stairs. If a player's in a wheelchair, here's what they have to do. Or they get this specialized wheelchair that lets them climb the stairs.
Or, like, here's like a really noble toad you can ride.
Here's a toad. If you're playing a druid who's paralyzed from the waist down, here's an animal companion that is literally a chair with legs.
It's fantastical and interesting, and also you can understand how it gets downstairs.
Here's a chair that is just, it's an ooze. It is an ooze chair.
I like how they added mermaids, and then it was like, okay, your land speed's 5. And it's like, okay, well, I can pick like a feat that lets me walk, right? He's like, yeah, at level 10, bitch.
But they do give you, like, and this is something we did talk about before, they at least will let you get a water chair that will move your speed. Initially it said, oh, it lets you move your land speed, but they did an errata that went, hey, it lets you move your swim speed if it's greater.
Yeah, well, yeah, but the thing with the mermaid chair too, that's almost it's more of like a survival kit because they also need water. So it's almost like it's not just about the movement. It's like, hey, you need multiple elements to survive. So this is your like habitat pod. I still have the problem though, is that it seems expensive for a level 1 adventure to have.
Yeah.
So I still don't like that. I think, like, if I play a mermaid, my ideal mermaid character is the commander, and I want to take the trait where you have a loyal mount, and I'll just, like, ride a giant crab.
Yeah.
And I will pick a spell later that lets me, like, walk if I need to, but it's like I would go with this build much faster than I would go for the portable ocean wheelchair.
It'd be fun. It's unique. You do things and you work with the GM and you make a fun, unique experience.
Or the other one I was telling you about, you pick Avatar The Last Airbender class.
Yeah.
And you can get an ability really early on where you just use your element to like surf on. But it's like, I feel like everybody thinks, oh, well, mermaid, you should pick water, and then you'll have all these water powers. And I'm like, no. Pick fire and earth, and you just represent, like, island volcanoes. And you surf on lava. Like, you summon lava and, like, soar across the room, and then kick somebody with your super strong tail, and then turn your fist to stone and punch them.
Yeah, I was going to say, in essence of bringing back Moana, you become Tafiti? Was her name?
Sure, yeah.
I want to say her name was like Tafiti or something like that.
It gives you flexibility to have fun with it, instead of just saying your wheelchair is now part of your body, and if you shapeshift into a bird, your bird also has a wheelchair. Like, it's
oh god, I was gonna say, yeah, that thing with D&D of, hey, you're playing a druid who's paralyzed and you turn it into an animal, your wheelchair will shapeshift with you, instead of being like, hey, you're a druid, when you wild shape, or you do the unique thing of, hey, you're a druid, and when you wild shape, you are a fully functioned animal, so you're a druid who really likes to be in wild shape, because it's when you have a fully working body.
Well, it's also, like, as someone was once telling me how they felt that, like, if you could shapeshift out of your disability, then it implies that your disability means that there's something wrong with you. And I understood where they were coming from, but my confusion was, is it offensive to shapeshift into an owl and then fly? Because you normally can't fly.
Exactly.
And I don't mean that in, like, a condescending way, but it was just like, I don't know that we understand what the goal here is, because I feel like when I log into World of Warcraft, I don't say, boy, I really want to make a fat white guy.
I want to be...
And he's going to sit a lot and have a heart medicine.
I want to be something different. I want to be, I want to be special.
I want to be a beautiful elf maiden. Well, it's been an hour and we rambled a lot, so I want to ask you real quick. Do you have any closing comments about the perils of logging onto the incorrect data center before a major expansion release?
I didn't realize that they wouldn't be able to let you transfer back. So yeah,
I feel like that's a bug. I don't think that was like a thing that you should have had to factor in.
I'd understand. Oh, hey, things are congested.
Big Mac's locked out of the game right now. He can't play. The expansion came out, and all his friends are in Discord right now, and they're all giggling and tickling each other's feet. And Big Mac's missing out because he has to talk to me instead.
It's not missing out. I wanted to come and do the podcast. It seemed like it was going to be fun, and
I'm sorry.
I'm having fun. It's fun doing this, but it is very frustrating. Make sure if you are playing games like WoW or Final Fantasy and expansions about to drop, before they do whatever maintenance they're going to do, you go back to your thing. Because I can understand, you have to wait this super long queue because the world's congested. I understand that, but not being able to go back to the data center where your character was created, I'll agree with you a little bit, Radish. I feel like this might be a bug.
Yeah. You know what was really interesting? One of my favorite WoW memories is actually, I want to say Shadowlands, which is my most hated expansion. They perfected this technology, and they did not have to take the servers down when the expansion went live.
Oh.
So it was basically, they did the maintenance ahead of time. They had this like early access period where it's like, okay, yeah, you can do the new stuff, like system wise, but narratively you don't do the expansion yet. There's a little bit of like preemptive story that like, oh, something's coming. There's some sort of Shadowland around the corner. Woohoo! But you're basically just, you could play the game like normal. And then when it was time and the clock hit 6 o'clock or whatever, and they flipped a switch, like I was playing my Death Knight, and I'm on my loyal undead griffin, and I'm just like flying around, and then all of a sudden a message pops up, and I was like psychically commanded by the leader of the Death Knights, and it's like, Death Lord, you are needed at the Citadel. The Lich, or no, like High Lord Morgraine commands the. There's a grave important whatever, and it's like, oh man, I gotta go there right now. And so I just fly there, and the story started, and it introduces you into the expansion, and it just like happened organically, and it was so cool because it didn't feel like waiting for the servers to mechanically tick on. It was like, oh, the world's alive. That's why I play MMOs, is this feeling.
Yeah. All right. So, something that does something quite similar. It's not exactly similar, but something that does do something similar to that. Warframe. When they drop updates or hotfixes, they'll put in like a global chat saying like, hey, this and that, and like do little blurbs talking to the players, and like, all right, hey, we're dropping the hotfix. If you're in a mission, don't leave it yet. And then, all right, the thing's been dropped. You can leave your missions now. You just got to relog in to get the new stuff.
You know, it would be interesting if I have you back on the show. It would be fun to talk about Warframe, because that is an entirely different type of experience.
I mean, yeah, I can talk about what I know about Warframe if you want to do another episode of that. This was fun.
That might be fun. Just because, like, there are MMO components to it, but it's also, like, I could not at all compare it to WoW. It's
something I will give Warframe, and I'll say this as, like, one of my things with it. It is one of the truly free-to-play MMOs I've ever seen.
And frankly, like, I know Destiny 2 just had this big finale, but I kind of prefer Warframe over Destiny.
Yeah, I know.
They're apples and oranges to a degree, but I tend to bounce off Destiny real fast, and then I hear there's a new character on Warframe. It's like, wow, they can get pregnant now, and I log right in.
I still don't know why they did that. They had to know what they were unleashing with a fucking, oh yeah, pregnant Warframe. Hey guys.
Okay, you know what? That's enough. We're ending the show. I'm just steering this tavern into a wall now. Big Mac, do you have anything to say? Do you have any plugs or recommendations?
If you want to see much better Pathfinder stuff than anything I'll probably do, definitely check out Narrative Declaration. I don't have anything plugging for myself. I don't physically really use social medias or YouTube, and our Pathfinder streams are private, invite-only streams, so it's not like I can plug my YouTube channel and say, hey, watch our streams, because I'm not doing that. But Narrative Declaration, they're really good people, and the guy who runs the main campaign is like actually a creative director of Paizo for Starfinder. They're sci-fi,
so he more or less understands the game,
more or less, and he's like the creative director for their sci-fi RPG role-playing game they have. I just said the same thing twice.
I'm kind of looking forward to this new edition of Starfinder.
I am too, actually. Like I'm very curious to see, because it's going to be cross-compatible with Pathfinder, and that'll be really cool.
Which is kind of just a testament to like the balance effort they put into Pathfinder 2.
Yeah.
That like the math just checks out. You know, you move a couple levers and now you're in space.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting, and it'll be neat to see, because with Starfinder being sci-fi based and all that, they have a much heavier emphasis on guns. So hey, maybe Pathfinder will start getting some better guns.
That would be fun. I don't want to extend the show much more, but someone was telling me how like the fun part of having the systems be cross-compatible is like you could repurpose a campaign for Starfinder.
Yeah. And
it's like, what if you took the Abomination Vaults, but instead of it being in a lighthouse, it was in like
derelict
a weird
station.
Abandoned space frame. Yeah. Like, you know, stuff like that. Or you just found a creepy temple on a Mars-like planet.
Yeah, like
and it's functionally a lighthouse. Like, you know, like there are ways to make it work, but suddenly turn it into a weird sci-fi story, and it's like, whoa.
Yeah, and it's something that I thought was like I was really looking forward to with. I'm going to say this so to not extend. So I was disappointed with Spelljammer from D&D. I was looking forward to Adventures in Space, and it wasn't that interesting.
Man, if they ever made StarCraft into an MMO, I imagine it would be the worst thing Blizzard made since whatever the last thing they made was.
I would say, how would they even do that? But I mean, Warcraft started off as a top-down RTS game too, so...
It did, but also, like, at least with Warcraft 3, they did this really heavy push into, like, heroic character units.
Yeah, they did a much bigger emphasis on like role-playing bits.
Yeah, I think that we would need a StarCraft game that felt a little more like, oh, here's, you know, the commander unit and his special totems that he summons.
Yeah, and with Warcraft, that's how games like Dota started, because of those special hero units.
Oh, speaking of Dota, how about that Deadlock? Anyways, good night, everybody.
Bye. Have fun.
I've been drinking too much vodkas. I got this cool vodka. Oh, it's so good.
This is a Tavern in Space? Is that what this is?
It's grapefruit and rose.
I don't drink a lot of alcohol. That sounds a little weird.
It's lovely.